everyone, my name is Nathila Vijayan, and thank you so much for joining us here at Med Discoveries Interviews. Med Discoveries is a committee that I started at my school where we help students find their niche and passion within medicine. Not so long ago, I started a section called Med Discoveries Interviews where we interview people around the Pittsburgh community to allow students to really understand that there are so many different pathways to be successful within medicine. Today we are here with Miss Ore. Thank you so much for being here today. We're so glad to take some time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Thank you. So for our first question, what initially drew you to the field of medicine and how has that motivation evolved?
Yes. So my first thing I always like to tell people is that when I was growing up, I was always very curious about the world, right? And different things that were happening, how things moved, how they worked. And then I used to always like to fight for people. I just hated people bullying or being mean to other people. So my dad used to think I was going to be a lawyer because I used to love fighting for people. So they were like, yeah, let's make her read books. And I hate reading. I do, with a true passion. So I was like, I don't think this is going to pan out well. And then when I was younger, about 11, 12, my aunt in Nigeria had passed away due to being misdiagnosed. Just due to the infrastructure of the healthcare system in Nigeria. And that was kind of my first interaction with death. And I just knew that I wanted to do something in the field to avoid it, what can I do to help people avoid tragic deaths like that. And then hearing my mother's stories and growing up in Nigeria, how she almost had a miscarriage with me, and there's no ambulance system in rural Nigeria. So they had to wait for her cousin. She's bleeding out on the floor. She thinks that the only thing that made me survive is that she put her legs up on the floor to keep all the blood in and everything. But she was she had to wait 30 minutes for her cousin to come and drive her another 30 minutes to the hospital to make sure that the pregnancy was viable. And we thank God I'm here today.
Yeah.
But just kind of hearing stories like that, it became evident that I wanted to do something in medicine. I just didn't know what. So then kind of going through high school, loving science, loving math, the normal things that people say, it was evident that I wanted to go into medicine. And I was after watching Ben Carson's Gifted Hands, the movie, I was I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. That's how I'm going to, stop people from dying.
Yeah.
And then going through undergrad and being a bioengineer, because I was okay, at least I can have the engineering techniques, because my dad's an engineer, so I just always loved building things. So I was okay, having that technique will help me in medicine and becoming the best neurosurgeon I can, right? And then my grandmother had passed away junior year, and that was a really big, another kind of death that really rocked me hard, because I was why are people still dying? All this technology, things are we're trying to make science better, but it's we can't outrun death. So then I joined hospice, which was volunteering to help people through their the last stages of their life, when they were given a terminal illness or a chronic illness that they're gonna pass away within 6 to 8 months. So I joined that, and I did that for 2 years, junior to senior year of college. And that kind of just gave me a different perspective on life. And the goal was now it's switched from trying to save everybody and trying to prevent death to how can we give people the quality of life that they desire, and how to make every moment to the best that we can. And that's kind of how I changed my framework. And I want to bring that not only to countries that can afford it or areas that can afford it, but especially underserved populations, specifically Black and brown children, especially on a global scale too, hoping to go back home to Nigeria and bring some of those skill sets to specifically adolescents. I love children, so just being able to better their quality of life wherever they are and empower them to take medicine and their own health into their own hands and not fear science and medicine.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, I can relate to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of honestly where you got really interested in medicine. My grandmother also passed away from lung cancer back when I was in 5th grade, but I think that really motivated me to go into medicine, because all the doctors in India they were more looking to just take the money away, and they didn't really actually look at the focus of whether if the patient is actually you doing okay, if this is the right path to go.
Yeah.
But they more looked at, oh, I think chemotherapy we can make the most money out of. I think that's what we should take. So honestly, I think that's what really motivated me to go into cancer. And honestly, your story is super inspiring, and that's really wonderful about the difference that you really want to make in our community. I feel truly inspired after that.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So for our second question, what was the most rewarding aspect of medical school so far, in your opinion?
Okay. You're asking the tough questions. Medical school. I think the most rewarding thing of medical school I've done is actually like being patient focused, because I know there's a lot of medical schools that like a lot of students don't get to see patients until like maybe their second and third year. But like off the bat, they had us like doing clinical skills, like performing physical exams on real patients like in the hospitals like as soon as like first year. So like I don't feel as nervous going into the hospital for like my third and fourth years, like, oh my god, I've never seen a patient. No, like I have that experience, and like Pitman really empowers us to like get into the community and like, you know, the little medicine that we know, whether it's like taking blood pressures, being able to give vaccinations, just like showing up in little ways, giving talks on like diabetes to like either the elderly patients or like, you know, the kids, like, you know, the kid camps that like I do at the Hill District. Just different ways to like, you know, still be involved in the community, even though we're like still like kind of baby doctors, like, you know, we're still getting there, but like it's just really nice, and it's so rewarding to like actually see the impact that you have like directly one-on-one with patients. I know I went home for Christmas and I was like practicing a whole family like how to take blood pressures and like how to take a physical exam, and then I got here and now I'm like talking with patients in the emergency room and like just like seeing the smile or just their warmness, because like they're just excited for us to be there and like to, you know, sit down and have a lot of time to like learn their story and like why they're there that day is like really rewarding. So I really like that part.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, the exposure that Pitt Medicine really provides is awesome. Yeah. All right, so for my next question, how do you handle the rigorous demands of medical school, both academically and personally? Like, what are some important things, such as like maybe study strategies that you do? How do you manage your time? Things like that. Some advice that you could give to us for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a huge advocate for mental health. Every talk I give, every time I talk to someone, it's always mental health, because people don't realize that I believe 98% of the battle starts in your mind, right? So if your mind is not okay, it's going to be evident in your body, and it's going to make a lot of things way more difficult. So I think medical school, first understanding medical school, like you got here, you're successful. That's step one. Like however success looks like is going to differ from person to person once you get to this level. Like, you know what I mean? Because like everybody here is very successful, very high achieving, but it's really easy to think that you're like dumb or stupid or like you're inadequate, because like the material is just so much and it's so difficult to like be able to manage so many passions that you have while still trying to learn basically the whole human body in and out. So taking that step to knowing that like you are successful for getting here, and that there's just going to be some adjustments that you might have to make, and there's going to be some failures that you've never actually had to fail before, but like you're going to like run into those, but that doesn't make you inadequate in any way. And again, I always think that therapy is really important, because a lot of us, the reason why we got here is because we were able to push like past like really like challenging things, and like we're just high achieving, like, you know, we're just like, you know what, I just have to get to this goal. But once you get to medical school, there's so many goals, and it's so easy to be overwhelmed by like how much there is, that it's important to talk about like, you know, how you actually cope through challenges. A lot of us don't have a lot of healthy coping mechanisms, but they were necessary for us to get to where we are, but they're not going to help us in the long run. Like they're going to burn us out eventually. So it's very important to like look at your mental health and like readjust in medical school. Two, it's important, I know it's a lot of material, it's important to know how you study, not how everybody else studies. So I think there's so many resources in medical school that it's very easy to get like overwhelmed and like, oh my god, everybody's doing Anki. I don't know if you guys know what Anki is. It's like the flashcards online. Everybody does Anki, or people read this certain textbook, but if that's not what works for you, that's okay. I don't do Anki at all. I do I read videos and I take handwritten notes, because that's how I've always learned that's best for me. I read textbooks. I know I told you I don't read.
Oh.
I read textbooks though. That's the really weird thing about me. I won't really understand things unless I physically read it in like a hardcover book. It's very weird. But that's how I learn. Everybody's like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know, but that's how I learn. So like learning, so one, taking care of your mental health and your physical health, because again, if you yourself cannot continue on, how are you going to take care of your patients later on? And then two, adjusting, studying, and your environment, tailoring it to yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, this is a very independent journey for everybody, even though there is collaboration, but the thing is everybody is so different and everybody comes from different walks. So like, you know, tailoring your experience for like what is good for you. And then three, leaning on people. I think a lot of us are like so independent, hyper independent, where we're like, yeah, I just gotta do this on my own. But like everybody here, you'd be so surprised how many like people you'll meet that are actually very similar to you. Maybe they don't look the same, but they have like similar experiences that can like really help you and like learning more about yourself, learning more about like what is good for you and how to learn better, like what to learn, and like just leaning on people just for that fellowship and companionship, because we all are human and we all require, you know, that kind of companionship and fellowship from our friends, family, partners, whatever that looks like. So like those are my three biggest pillars, I think, takeaways.
I completely understand. Even in like our high school, we've started like the school has started like this thing called the chill room, where we can actually talk to a therapist if we're having like mental health problems, because obviously in high school we're all so focused on like extracurriculars, education, and all that kind of like getting the awards, all that stuff. It's so much of like a stressful environment, the competition. Like I think taking that time for mental health is really important, and even as you continue into medical school and beyond, it's even more important as stressful environments just keep growing more and more. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And also keeping your friends together, as you said, and keeping a really good group and trying not to be super independent is really, really important. All right, so in what ways do you think that your undergraduate program actually helped you through medical school?
Medical school, yeah, for sure. So I went to Pitt for undergrad, so I think the biggest thing that helped me was like getting accustomed to the environment, because I lived in Pittsburgh for 4 years. So like one of the biggest challenges in like adjusting to medical school is like a new environment altogether, right? It's like, oh, where do I go grocery shopping? How do I take the bus to school? What's the best neighborhood to live in? You know, things like that. I didn't have to worry about any of that because I went to school here. So that's like the overall like one big thing that helped was like being here already. So like I didn't have to worry about getting acquainted with my environment. Two, I studied bioengineering. So I think just the rigor of like having to like critically think through things and not just like blatantly memorize has helped me in being able how to reason through medical cases and problems kind of a little bit better than some of my counterparts. But on the flip side, that kind of puts me at a disadvantage because I'm not used to memorizing just bulk information. I'm just so like, if you don't know something in engineering, it's like you can derive it or you can get to it somehow. But like here in medicine, it's like if you don't know like the bacteria is like some kind of property of it, you just don't know it, right? But I think there's pros and cons to everything, but I think the biggest pro is like that critical thinking, because that will take you very far. The ability to like work through problems, even if the problem is like, how do I memorize the best? That really helps set me up for success, and like being able to like study and work for long hours, because unfortunately medical school you do have to study for very long hours. I hate it. I probably am one of the few that don't study as long as I should. But like there are people who study like 6 to 7 to 10 hours every day.
Oh wow.
I'm not gonna wrap myself out. I don't think I study up to that unless it's like finals week, then like we ramp it up to like the 10 hours a day. But like on a normal day, probably like 2 to 3 hours. It's not good, but we're working on it. You know, everybody's evolving and changing. But yeah, so engineering really helped me to like be able to, one, critically think, two, work for long hours and periods of time. And yeah, I think those are some of the big pillars.
All right, so what role has mentorship played in your journey And how can students find mentors? What's your advice to find mentors, form bonds with your teachers,
Yes.
something like that?
Yeah, so the one thing I always tell people of mentorship, something I learned, is just like to be transparent and call it out. I feel like a lot of people in medicine are like, hey, I don't know whether to ask them to be my mentor or if I should just play it cool. It's like making friends in middle school, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, should I play it cool and like just be around them until they claim me as their mentee? And I think the number one thing is to call it out. Because if you don't call it out, they don't know the expectations to bring to the table,
Yeah.
and they don't know what you're asking for. So I feel like sending an email, hey, I really like the work that you do, doing your research on somebody, you know, we're in the age of technology. We all know how to cyber stalk people. So like, you know, get to know them, get to know their information a little bit, like what interests them about you, whether it's their personality, because you're going to bond with people over their personality, right? Over their character, over their research areas. It doesn't always just have to be, oh, they're just prestigious or it's just this area. I always tell people, you want to be mentored by people you inspire to be, and that is tenfold, right? It's their personality. What does their home life look like? What are their priorities in life? Yes, their research areas are important. Yes, like their academics, their prestige, absolutely. But like, who do you want to be, and are they kind of mimicking that? But it doesn't always have to be like the whole entire person. That's exactly who I want to be. If it's just like how they go about research is important to like. You like that component to them, you ask them about that, like, hey, can you mentor me through my research journey? Then there'll be other people, hey, can you mentor me through my professional journey, right? Like, how did you go, like, for example, I have a mentor who's a Black woman. How do you go through medicine as a Black woman? That's kind of how she helps me. But I have another mentor who's research. How do you research? One of my research topics right now is like depression and suicide prevention in adolescents. And she's helping me break down how to actually be a researcher, because I've never really had anybody break that down for me. But I asked her, I was like, hey, can you mentor me through this process? Because I need somebody to tell me how to do research. And I'm tired of like trying to figure it out by myself. So I think like just calling it out, looking for people that embody important things that you want to learn from them, and then being very open to learning from them, being curious, and then also being open to switching if it plays out and you're like, okay, this was a wonderful relationship, I think I want to lane switch to something else and find another mentor. Being very transparent about that, talking about it, and most of the time in medicine, people will help you get to your goal. If they're like, oh, you don't need to be with me, you need to actually be with so-and-so, they will help connect you most of the time. But if you don't have that honest conversation, you'll never get there. So that's my biggest thing about mentorship, just being transparent and honest and establishing expectations from the beginning.
For sure, yeah. And I think to add on to that, even in like your high school time, when you try to form a connection with your teacher to be able to get that recommendation letter, I think high school students were like, oh no, we shouldn't talk to our teachers, we should be kind of cool, kind of back off with it. I think that's maybe something that they should probably keep in mind. That's advice for the future and for us in general,
I think with that one too, with like recommendations from high school teachers, because I know that's a little different. I think still like kind of being cool with them, absolutely. Being in their space a lot, because I feel like people are like, oh yeah, I'll just talk to them like once in a month. No, like mentorship is like an ongoing process and you have to be there a lot. So like being in their space a lot. Like my physics teacher wrote me a letter of recommendation for all my programs I applied to, but he was also my track coach. And he was like, hey, I think you'd be really good in physics, why don't you take AP physics? And I was like, okay. And like even when I was on lunch breaks, I was in his office, I was like, hey, either I'm tired and like let's talk about how I can be a better track athlete, or like let's also talk about how I can thrive in this AP physics, because this AP physics is tough and I don't know why you asked me to be here. But like, you know, opportunities like that. My chemistry teacher, you don't have to outright say, hey, I want this person to write me a letter eventually, but like this is a genuine connection I really appreciate, and I want to like cultivate that. And then at some point in the relationship, you will be like, hey, I know I'm applying soon, will you be open to writing me a letter of recommendation? Because there are some teachers that will be like, hey, I don't know you enough, maybe let's get to know each other more. And you want to establish that before you need the letter, like, you know what I mean? You want to establish that in the middle, so you give them space and time to be able to like get to know me better.
That's awesome. Okay, so taking a turn from kind of like advice and in general, so kind of relating to the committee that I own. So what are some new advancements and what is your opinion on AI in medicine? I think that's like a really big topic. It's kind of controversial, but what is your opinion on how if AI should be implemented in medicine? Maybe some opinions on, do you think that AI is right to be allowed for I guess patient diagnosis, things like that. Should that be allowed, or should a doctor be on hands instead, and we should kind of avoid that kind of track? What do you think?
So I think AI is very interesting. The little I know like ChatGPT, right? Like everybody knows that. I think in taking the direction of involving AI in patient diagnosis, I think is a double-edged sword, right? I think there's components to it because absolutely the science, there's just so much science and there's so much knowledge on the the internet, yes. So like it's very helpful to have a resource that can like kind of go through and sort through those things quickly. But I think a question that people are asking is like, does AI have the ability to sense, human emotion, human interaction? Maybe there's ways that AI can read body language, but you know what I mean? Like we as humans are able to kind of bring that to the table where we're able to like perceive how our patient is actually feeling, just aside from, oh, my tummy aches today. But like, would they be able to read into it like, oh, my patient seems anxious today? Maybe that is leading to the tummy ache, as opposed to AI just saying, hey, they have a tummy ache. Maybe these are the list of things that they could have. I think AI kind of depersonalizes things a little bit, but is there ability to groom AI to show that emotion? I believe so. Do I think we're there yet? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know where they are with technology in that area yet. But I think that takes away from the emotion and the human connection of medicine. Yeah. Because even though medicine is science, the medicine that I came into and wanted to be a part of is a medicine that is based on human connection. Because sometimes there's not a cure for what that person is going through, and that sucks. I can call that out. Like cancer is like it's a terrible thing, but that connection and knowing that there's somebody who cares about me and who is walking with me through this is so important and so monumental to the whole field of medicine. Being able to have that emotional connection with patients and doctors. And I think AI can help with the science part of it, but I think you can't take away that human, because a lot of people come to the doctor for that.
Yeah, I completely understand. Okay, now for the last question, finally, to conclude this interview, what advice do you have for high school students who are passionate about pursuing a career in medicine?
Yeah, get involved. I think that's the biggest thing. Get involved. Talk to people. What you're doing, this is amazing.
Thank you.
Look into resources that showcase what doctors are doing, what med students are doing, what even people in college are doing to in medicine and science. Because the thing is, we all think that if you're interested in science, you have to be a doctor. But there are so many ways to be involved in medicine and healthcare that doesn't always look like a doctor. And I think it's important for everybody to engage in those different ways before just honing in on becoming, a doctor. Mind you, I will encourage everybody should be a doctor, but there's so much need for nurses, for PAs, for respiratory therapists, for auditory, for podiatrists, for dietitians and nutritionists and physical therapists. You know what I mean? The healthcare team is so vast, and there's so many ways you can get involved. But just get engaged. Volunteer at your local hospital. Ask questions. Ask the doctors and nurses, anybody questions. Google. Now we have AI, right? So ChatGPT, ask questions. If you want, in high school, you can get involved in some research programs, summer programs, to really get your feet wet if you're interested, or if it's I need to lane switch. Do well in school. Science, math, English, everything is important. Social studies, history is important. I have to emphasize that. I hated history, but do well in school. Do some extracurriculars that you like. You don't always have to do the perfect pre-med pathway. I feel like people get kind of hyper focused on that. Be the person that you want to be. You know what I mean? I ran track. I love track. I play piano. I love music. So those things are important to me because like those are still the ways that you can touch somebody in life, right? So like be who you want to be. I know that's so cliche, but like be engaged in what you are passionate about. And then also on the side, make sure you do well in school. And you know, just keep pushing.
That's awesome. All right. I think on that note, thank you everyone for watching this interview, and thank you so much to Ore for being here. Please like, share this video, and follow Med Discovery's interviews. And we hope to see you here at the next interview. Thank you so much. Bye.